But I always remember this one guy that stood out who's from Saudi Arabia, who I met at a hostel. I was staying in Kuala Lumpur, um, and he he came from a very conservative family, as you can imagine, coming from Saudi Arabia. But he felt that Kuala Lumpur and just the buzz and the excitement of the city and all these new people that he was meeting um, really opened his mind, and he suddenly I remember he had a little bit too much to drink that night, and he just completely broke down to me crying, telling me about he just didn't feel he didn't feel like he was living the experience he wanted to, and that meeting all of these different people through backpacking, um, yeah, he just got very, very emotional, and it was kind of a bit of a shock to me to see how how travel and tourism and experiencing new cultures can really just open your eyes and, you know, just completely change your perspective around how other people live, how other people experience the world. And yeah, his name was Mohammed, and he was a lovely, lovely guy. He was like a big teddy bear, one of the friendliest guys I've ever met. And yeah, so Mohammed from Saudi. Well, I think Vietnam is arguably my favorite country to visit in the world. I've been there three, maybe four times now, right from the north in places like Hanoi and Sapa, right down to Ho Chi Minh. And well, firstly, the food is, I think Vietnamese food is the best in the world. And people talk about pho, which is, of course, the traditional bowl of soup which you get with beef and these flat noodles. But um, yeah, the food is really important to Vietnamese culture and their people, and they're very passionate about the freshness and quality of their ingredients. So you can go to different places in the country, like Hoi An, for example, is probably my favorite place in Vietnam, and they've got completely different dishes of their own, unique to each region. So the food, for one, is fantastic, but there's there's also just so much to experience of Vietnam. Like I mentioned Sapa, for example. That was a great chance for me to go trekking for 4 days amongst rice paddies. Again, great photography, visiting local villages and meeting local people, and meeting people from indigenous tribes, which was really eye-opening experience, and getting to know about their handicrafts and how they make a living. And then you've got cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, which again, I just love the buzz of those cities. I'm not really one who hates cities and loves nature or one or the other. I love both urban uh, urban environments as well as getting out and about and being completely by myself on a 3-hour hike in the mountains. But yeah, Vietnam's responsible holiday is going to be either more expensive, uh, or there's going to be some kind of sacrifice, like I don't know, I've got to keep hold of my towels for a week on end or something like that. Or worst of all, is going to be a little bit boring. But responsible tourism is actually the opposite of that, because you can have these amazing experiences with local people and with nature. But you don't really want to dissuade them from making that decision. I always say that you should, rather than sort of giving yourself a pat on the back and talking about how sustainable you are, you shouldn't bury that under the sand. But the best time to talk about that and the impact that the visitor's trip is having, your guest's holiday at your hotel is having, is when they're there. And you can actually show them rather than telling them. That's sort of marketing gold dust there, is showing and not telling. So I think we need to do more of the focus on how are you doing the marketing and storytelling while people are actually there after they've booked. And it's just about communicating sustainability in the right places, not going too heavy during the sort of booking and planning period, but being honest and educating them. And if they want to find out more, they could go to your about page or your blog section. But the traveler experience has always got to come first.
Jamie, welcome to the Nifty Travel Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's great to speak to you today.
Yeah, you're most welcome. And one thing I always like to ask my guests first is about your earliest memories of travel.
Ooh, earliest memories of travel. Well, with the family when I was very young, it usually revolved around going to baking hot destinations, usually Turkey or somewhere in Greece. Um, yeah, often by the swimming pool. I never really liked Turkey and Greece, to be honest, as a kid when I was growing up, because it was just, yeah, far too hot, too sweaty, and it always seemed so dry and arid, the landscapes. But now, going back to Greece and Turkey and really getting to dive into the local cultures is, yeah, I love going back to those places now. Yeah.
But I suppose at the time, we have a different relationship with wherever we go, don't we? I mean, do you remember it because it was like a new experience?
Yeah, it was always nice to get away and spend time with the family, with my mum, dad, and sister. Yeah, and the food was always amazing out there, much better than sausage and mash, things like that back in the UK. But it was always great to get away from home, wherever it was, and yeah, spend some good time with good quality time with the family.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it gave you a clue as to what you'd be interested in the future, or was it something that came along later?
To be honest, I think when I really fell in love with travel, holidays were always sort of an annual treat with the family, but um, when I sort of really fell in love with it was probably when I was at university, and I was talking to my dad a lot at the time about his trips and travels as when he was around about my age, going through the United States, hitchhiking and taking Greyhound buses all over the country. And I just thought, like, wow, that sounds like a heck of a trip. So I wanted to sort of follow in his footsteps. And the plan was always to go to the United States and Canada and do a trip of that, my own sort of version. But coming out of uni, the bank balance was painfully low. So instead, I thought, okay, well, why don't I try something completely different and, experience a really different culture? Because, United States, Canada, the UK, we have quite fairly similar cultures compared to other countries. So instead, I decided to go to Southeast Asia and spent a good 6 months out there with my best friend. I did another trip back to Southeast Asia because I just fell in love with it the following year. And backpacking was really where I sort of fell in love with travel and the more community-based side of it. So meeting local people, strolling through markets, and having a laugh with tiny little old Vietnamese ladies who are slapping my hands away, telling me I'm preparing my bowl of pho the wrong way. So yeah, backpacking was really my gateway into falling in love with travel.
And what do you think? What do you think it is about backpacking that is so popular? Is it kind of a releasing experience?
Yeah, I think for a lot of younger people, it's almost like a rite of passage, and there's all of these kind of these funny myths and anecdotes that people have, and people saying that you can really find yourself and come back a changed person after you go on a long backpacking trip like I did. But it's just living on a tight budget, I think, makes you be a lot more creative in terms of your travel plans. And with backpacking, you're staying in a lot of hostels a lot of the time, and hostels, I know there's a bit of a they have a bit of a bad reputation, but for me, I love that sense of having these community spaces where you can meet other people that you would otherwise never really get the chance to. Meeting people from South America, from Australia. So it really broadens your horizons and you know opens the doorway to new potential friendships. And when you don't have much of a solid plan set in stone, suddenly all of these doors open, new opportunities. You hear everyone's carrying around this massive Lonely Planet guidebook in their backpacks, of course, but you hear from something when you're having evening drinks around the table or something, preparing to go out to a nightclub or something, and someone suggests some really cool idea, like, I don't know, going to some derelict ghost tower in Bangkok or something like that. And yeah, so some really, really crazy adventures that you can have through backpacking and staying in hostels, meeting new people that I don't think you would otherwise get staying in a 4 or 5 star hotel. So whenever I get the chance, I much prefer to stay in a hostel, maybe stay in a private room now with my fiance, but yeah, still love the community feel and the different people that you can meet through hostels. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Did you find that you had interesting conversations then, that really sort of changed your perception of, I don't know, where you were at a given moment? Or you talked about, having your plans changed at the last minute, but what sort of other conversations surprised you?
Yeah. Ah, God, there's so many different people that I met from, places like Malaysia. But I always remember this one guy that stood out who's from Saudi Arabia, who I met at a hostel. I was staying in Kuala Lumpur. Um, and he he came from a very conservative family, as you can imagine, coming from Saudi Arabia. But he felt that Kuala Lumpur and just the buzz and the excitement of the city and all these new people that he was meeting um, really opened his mind. And he suddenly, I remember he had a little bit too much to drink that night, and he just completely broke down to me crying, telling me about he just didn't feel he didn't feel like he was living the experience he wanted to, and that meeting all of these different people through backpacking, yeah, he just got very, very emotional, and it was kind of a bit of a shock to me to see how how travel and tourism and experiencing new cultures can really just open your eyes and you know just just completely change your perspective around how other people live, how other people experience the world. And yeah, his name was Mohammed, and he was a lovely, lovely guy. He was like a big teddy bear, one of the friendliest guys I've ever met. And yeah, so Mohammed from Saudi Arabia definitely stood out. And I think he's now actually moved to Kuala Lumpur because he loved it so much there, just like I did. But yeah, he made that a permanent move. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, it was obviously a life-changing moment for him, and
Yeah.
you were living it with him by the sound of it.
Yeah, yeah. To have that moment where he'd had a bit too much to drink and was just completely breaking down and telling me basically everything which he felt almost paralyzed by, with his culture and his family back home. Um, yeah, it was kind of a special moment to be there and to experience that and see a real human moment, that's completely unscripted. And yeah, it was just full of heart, and I was glad to be there to just give him a pat on the back and say, "Well, welcome to backpacking. Welcome to
Yeah.
uh, the meeting all of these different peoples from other walks of life.
No, it's incredible, isn't it? Do you
Mm.
think do you think it's a cliche to say, oh well, when you get back to uh, the country of your birth, that you see it in a totally different way?
Um, uh, I don't know really, Alex. I mean, in some ways, sometimes when I've returned back to the UK, Dorset, specifically in the south of England, um, I've been grateful to be back. But a lot of the time, I kind of have mm, a bit of a resentment of being English, almost an embarrassment, and I think a lot of that's got to do with the political situation and Brexit, of course. But I won't go down that rabbit hole. Otherwise, we'll be talking for hours about politics going completely off track. But yeah, I've got a love-hate relationship with England, really. I think the food is underrated in some ways. I still think a Sunday roast is one of the best meals that any person can enjoy. But yeah, at the same time, the weather is unpredictable. It's not always the best. But also, where I've lived in Dorset, I was so desperate for so long to get away from it all and travel halfway across the world to places like Southeast Asia, backpacking trips eventually, in Canada, in the United States and Europe, and you just think, "Wow, this is fantastic." But then, you go back home and you realize after being away for so long, and I think that that length of time, spending that long away from home does make you suddenly realize that England and home has got a lot going for it. So just within Dorset, I mean, I live sort of an hour from the Jurassic Coast, which is really beautiful, fantastic area with a gorgeous coastline, cliffs, almost like the cliffs of Dover. And it's also famous, of course, being the Jurassic Coast for lots of major dinosaur and fossil finds. And then to the east of me, I've got the New Forest, which is a gorgeous place for a Sunday walk or going around on the bicycle and seeing all the New Forest ponies, which are just walking around, causing road blockages and all kinds of chaos. But yeah, so it's a complicated relationship I've got with England. Eventually, I think I would like to move away to perhaps somewhere like Germany, but for now, I've just returned from my latest camper van trip with my fiance, and it feels good to be back home, especially with the World Cup around the corner. Hopefully, we'll watch Harry Kane and England lift the World Cup first time in 60 years. But yeah,
Maybe there's always
fingers
hope.
crossed. Yes, there's always hope, and I think is hope is the thing that kills you, isn't it?
So talking of camper vans,
Mm.
that's well, we there is an idea of what camper vans are like. What's it like to sort of choose that as a lifestyle? How does it change your relationship wherever you choose to travel?
Oh God, blimey, where do I start with van life? I mean, we bought our van about over 3 years ago now, and we planned to do it up, convert it, make it into a proper living space where we could also work. So that included bathroom, shower, toilet, proper kitchen, desk. I don't know how we crammed it all in, and we planned to be setting off on the road 10 months later. But unfortunately, I discovered I'm pretty terrible at DIY. So it took us about 2 years in the end to get the whole thing up and running. But yeah, last year we set off in February. We took the ferry from Portsmouth to Bilbao on the north coast of Spain, and then we traveled along north coast of Spain to places like Santander, through the Picos de Europa, and then down through Portugal. And eventually we went to Morocco to spend 3 months there. And yeah, that was last year's trip. And this year we've done Germany. We headed there for ITB at the beginning of March and did Czech Republic, Austria, back to Germany, and then quick trip back through to England and home. But yeah, van life is, I mean, especially working in travel, it's a real privilege. And I think you've got to have a bit of a um, it's not for everyone, van life. Let's just say that because conditions, it's a tiny space. I think maybe there's, I don't know, 3 meters squared where we've actually got to actually walk and move about. But the upside of it is that you get to see all the places which are on everyone's bucket list, of course, but the real upside of it, and what I love about it, is you get to experience the slow travel way of life, and you get to see the places and the destinations between the hotspots. So, for example, last year we absolutely loved Portugal, and we were in Portugal in March, so shoulder season, maybe at the very end of off season. By no means like summer season where you'd expect to see throngs of tourists everywhere. But even in March, in Lisbon and Porto, just the number of people there was jaw dropping, really. Um, we were kind of surprised and taken aback, thinking that, okay, well, March would be a great time to visit Porto and Lisbon. But still, even then, I think since around about 2015, Lisbon has been that sort of up and coming trending destination. And then a few years later, that's the baton has almost been passed on to Porto, because Lisbon is now suffering from some over tourism problems. But in between those two cities, we went to a tiny little city called Coimbra in Portugal, which is sort of halfway between Lisbon and Porto. And it's got one of the oldest universities in the world. I think the second oldest university in the world, built in the 12th century, if I'm right in thinking. But yeah, there's so much going for it there. There was a beautiful botanical garden, which me and my fiance love visiting when we go to different places. But it was so quiet. You could hear a pin drop in these places, and it, it had so much beauty in the city. I love to walk around with my camera and do a bit of street photography. And it was perfect for that, really, because the thing that I find ruins a lot of pictures is people say in St. Mark's Square in Venice, just hundreds and hundreds of tour groups, 50 plus people per group, all waving their selfie sticks around and their flags and things. And you just think, oh God, I wish I hadn't brought the camera with me, because I'm never going to get the shot. But yeah, van life has been really fantastic for experiencing these places, which either most British people would never think about visiting, or they've never even heard of. So there was another spot when I came back from Morocco on the way back to the UK. I made a quick stop in Salamanca, and again, Barcelona, Madrid, these places have. I mean, Barcelona is one of the poster children of over tourism, but Salamanca, God, it was, yeah, just gorgeous. The architecture, the the stillness of the city, the food as well. And yeah, I was just really surprised there's so many places which are not in the typical Condé Nast bucket list or Lonely Planets places to visit for 2026. And you think, okay, well, maybe it's the places which aren't on those lists where I should check out, because, like I say, places like Venice, I think the the visitor experience you get is kind of diluted just by the volume of people there. Um, yeah, so van life has been great so far. Ups and downs with leaks and all kinds of electrical wiring problems, which we've fixed along the way. But yeah, I've really enjoyed van life, and we've kind of fallen in love with it, me and my fiance, and we're not keen to sell the van anytime soon, that's for sure.
It sounds like you were traveling slow enough to sense the rhythm of wherever you stopped.
Yeah, yeah. So we try and spend as long as we can in um, as many places as possible, which I kind of guess is a bit of an oxymoron. But we both work full time as well, so I'm busy building Latitude, the community and events thing for responsible tourism professionals. I also still do responsible tourism marketing strategy for several clients. So yeah, often we'll spend a week in one place at a time. Um, Even the small places like Utrecht in the Netherlands, or we just spent a lot of time in Germany on this recent trip, and the Black Forest, so many different beautiful villages and hikes, which we really like doing at the weekends. So having the opportunity to sort of park in the middle of nowhere, right out in nature, in the forests between mountains and lakes, we get all of our work done during the day, or push that back and go for a nice walk in the mornings or in the evenings. And yeah, it's really really great way to really soak up the culture and spend a long time in these different countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned that you like photography. If you've been in southern Germany, and you mentioned um, Austria and the Dolomites, they're all kind of in the same area. Does that mean you love mountains?
Yes, I'm definitely one of these mountains over beach people. I mean, if there's a combination of the two, brilliant. But I just get really bored on beaches. I know loads of English people, and I don't understand why, but they're all desperate for that sort of 30 degrees plus holiday, just coming back with a tan. And it really frustrates me when friends and family, when I get back from my travels and they say, "Oh, Jamie, you don't look like you've tanned at all." It's like, that's not why I went on holiday. I went to experience a new culture. I went to see amazing scenery and landscapes. But yeah, definitely a mountain boy. I wish we had a few more mountains in England, but we're hoping to do a couple of trips to Wales and Scotland this year. So, Snowdonia National Park and the Scottish Highlands. But yeah, you mentioned the Dolomites. My fiance and I, we did the Dolomites, I think 4 years ago now, and it was honestly just one of the best trips we've ever done. We spent about a month in Italy on that trip. Around about 10 days in the Dolomites, doing as many different hikes as we possibly could, staying in places like Ortese and what's the other place called? Ortese and Cortina, where they just hosted the Winter Olympics, or at least they've hosted a Winter Olympics one year. I can't remember. Don't really keep up to date with the Winter Olympics, but yeah, the Dolomites are really something else in terms of mountain scenery and photography opportunities as well for me.
Yeah, well, of course, mountain scenery is brilliant for that, isn't it? Because you get so many interesting days that are uninterrupted by the usual things that would get in the way back in England, isn't it? Trees
Yeah.
and landscapes. Surely it's a photographer's dream.
Oh yeah. I mean, the different lighting conditions you get in the evening, in the mornings, um, how the light interacts with the shadows and the mountain faces and ridges. Yeah, it's really really a photographer's dream. And one of my friends and business connections, Abigail Blake, who's worked for Travelist and the Eden Project, she's planning a trip to Italy, and she said, "Did you have any recommendations, Jamie?" And I said, "You have to go to the Dolomites and take your camera, because you'll get pictures like you've never ever had before. These will be ones that you want to stick up on your wall and send to all your friends and family as postcards." But yeah, um, yeah, I really do love spending as much time in the mountains as possible, and that's what we really loved about Germany and Austria on this trip, um, in that sort of Tyrol region. So we were in Salzburg, um, did lots of the lakes like Wolfgangsee and Achensee, and Germany as well. Just yeah, there's something that just I find a lot of peace in the mountains, and quiet and stillness, and just a chance to relax and give my brain a bit of a chance to think, um, yeah, it's the place where I get a lot of inspiration for different ideas with business and well, just a bit broader in life as well, generally.
They are very calming places. I do agree.
Yeah.
I've been to Italy a few times, but not a great deal in the north. Is the north? I'm told that the north of Italy is not really that Italian. It has more um, similarities to its neighbours than it does to Italy. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, it's hard to say really. I mean, I haven't been to places like Milan or Turin or anything like that. Our trip in Italy a few years ago, we did the Dolomites, then Venice down to Rome, and then onwards to Naples and Pompeii. But the north of Italy, from what I experienced, was basically Venice, which I don't know if Venice feels Italian in the same way that say Naples or Rome does, because they've got there's definitely a Venetian culture there, but Venice is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. But in the Dolomites, where we spent most of our time in the north of Italy, it does feel very similar to the sort of western side of Austria and the southern sort of regions like Bavaria in Germany. It's all got that very Tyrolean feel where we're sort of at the end of the ski season, so we would see people taking their skis on their shoulders, but also people just wearing shorts and t-shirt. Me, of course, as well, being a Brit, and anything above 15 degrees is, yep, thumbs up for shorts weather. Um, but yeah, the northern region of Italy, from what I've experienced, does feel very similar to Austria and southern Germany. I think it's just that whole Tyrolean culture, the different sort of fonts that you get on these wooden shack buildings and cabins and chalets. Yeah, just got a very romantic, charming feel about it.
And maybe the beer kellers as well.
Yes, definitely the beer kellers. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Vietnam. I figure that your remarks about it suggest that it has a special place for you. What is it about Vietnam that caught your imagination?
Whew, Vietnam. Well, I think Vietnam is arguably my favorite country to visit in the world. I've been there 3, maybe 4 times now, right from the north in places like Hanoi and Sapa, right down to Ho Chi Minh. And well, firstly, the food is, I think Vietnamese food is the best in the world. And people talk about pho, which is, of course, the traditional bowl of soup which you get with beef and these flat noodles. But yeah, the food is really important to Vietnamese culture and their people, and they're very passionate about the freshness and quality of their ingredients. So you can go to different places in the country, like Hoi An, for example, is probably my favorite place in Vietnam, and they've got completely different dishes of their own, unique to each region. So the food, for one, is fantastic, but there's also just so much to experience of Vietnam. Like I mentioned Sapa, for example. That was a great chance for me to go trekking for 4 days amongst rice paddies. Again, great photography, visiting local villages and meeting local people, and meeting people from indigenous tribes, which was really eye-opening experience, and getting to know about their handicrafts and how they make a living. And then you've got cities like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, which again, I just love the buzz of those cities. I'm not really one who hates cities and loves nature or one or the other. I love both urban urban environments as well as getting out and about and being completely by myself on a 3-hour hike in the mountains. But yeah, Vietnam's got everything really. It's got the mountains, it's got amazing cave experiences, What else? Beaches as well, of course. And yeah, of course, everyone loves to eat while they go on holiday. So Vietnam's got everything. And my fiance has never been to Southeast Asia before, but we're definitely planning a trip in the next couple of years. I say ambitiously, but I'm definitely going to be dragging her back out there at some point just to show everything off to her. And yeah, just the people as well in Vietnam. They're so friendly and welcoming and warm. Um, and staying in hostels as well, you feel like, I don't know, compared to say Thailand, Thailand feels sort of the place to go if you're a first time backpacker. It's very safe. It's got a lot to offer. Again, the food in Thailand is amazing, but in Vietnam, it kind of feels um, like a bit of a wild card. Like anything could happen the next day. So one day you could be trekking in the hills in Sapa. Day after that, you might be going on a cruise in Ha Long Bay, which I think Ha Long Bay is overrated, but I think Cat Bar Island is a better option in terms of if you want the that sort of Ha Long Bay-esque experience, much less crowded. But yeah, God, I love Vietnam for sure. Yeah.
Well, I was only going to mention it because you have a few shots and a few video clips on one of your websites, and I thought, I wonder if that is Vietnam. So, do you know what I'm talking about, and where they are?
Yeah, you might be if you're talking about Instagram, perhaps you might have like had a quick scroll on there. But yeah, lots of my old pictures when I first got a professional camera. Um, yeah, a lot of those are still on my Instagram page, and yeah, just the cities in Vietnam are really great for photography as well because you've got all the neon lights flashing as well, but there's so many scooters driving about as well. So if you've got like a long exposure, you can get these really cool shots with, the red and the full beam lights going past with neon backgrounds and tea lanterns as well. Yeah.
Well, I've been to Thailand. Some of what you're describing sounds a little bit like that. I remember going to Chiang Mai for the first time and wondering how the city was able to stand up. There were so many wires and poles stringing between everything, and I was
Yeah.
thinking, wow, it looks like it was all patched together yesterday, but clearly that's not the case.
Yeah, yeah. Thailand for me, that was the first time, that's the furthest I'd ever been when I went on that first backpacking trip, I think back in 2015. And that was a real culture shock. I mean, going from a small town in England, and even having visited, huge cities like London and Paris and Berlin in Europe, um, yeah, Bangkok was really something else. So when I got to the airport and took the metro into the heart of the city, as soon as you get off the monorail, it's just complete sensory overload, like lights, noises, cars beeping, like you say, the wires hanging everywhere. It's just like, wow, this feels like almost something out of Blade Runner in a way. It's yeah, just a crazy, crazy place. And I know that a lot of people have kind of got a it's a bit of a Marmite city, I think. Some people love it, some people hate it, but yeah, I'm firmly in the camp of I love Bangkok. There's so much that it's got to offer. River cruises, amazing temples and culture, food as well. Oh my God. I couldn't get enough of the food, but somehow I ended up losing 10 kilos on that first backpacking trip I did. I've got no idea how. It's probably just from profusely sweating as this poor, fragile English boy. But yeah, Thailand is an amazing place, and Chiang Mai as well. Chiang Mai might have been my favorite place in Thailand, and I went to two very different Chiang Mai's actually. So we'd planned that first backpacking trip around Songkran, which is the water festival. So it's the hottest time of year, I think, in Thailand. So they've got this water festival to cool everyone down, and yeah, it had been baking hot that week, and then almost at midnight, when the bells rang to ring in Songkran, um, the skies just opened and there was this huge downpour, almost like a monsoon, and it was crazy. And then all of the locals start coming out with water guns and getting everyone in the bars and things like that, and it was just fantastic. And yeah, we spent that whole week in Chiang Mai, and then we came back after, I think, sort of doing the loop from northern Thailand to Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and then back to Thailand. And yeah, we visited Chiang Mai again, and yeah, it was a lot quieter. You could really appreciate, the architecture and the history of the place. And yeah, how was your experience of Chiang Mai, Alex?
Um, well, the one thing you mentioned about losing weight, that I I resonate with that, because I said to my friend I was staying with that there is a lake following us around everywhere, that it's not an
Mm.
artificial, it's my own natural lake following me.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
couldn't imagine that, it was like 26 all day and all night, and I was like, I couldn't stop sweating.
Oh,
That was
blimey. You're lucky with only 26. I mean, we went there in the low season, so it was at times it got up to 40 degrees, and you know how humid Thailand can get. But I think it's really the humidity more so than the degrees Celsius that's the worst of it. But yeah, do envy you having gone at a slightly cooler time of year, Alex.
Now, you mentioned food. Do you think
Mm.
when you've experienced the food of the countries you've visited to, do you think the food really reflects uh, and tells the story of the of the locations you've been to?
Oh, well, there's a question. I mean, I'm not really too much of a foodie or a food connoisseur. I'm quite a simple man with simple tastes. Well, I say simple taste now. I've been vegan for the last couple of years, which makes things a little bit more difficult, especially when you're going traveling. But yeah, even so, we on the way on our last camper van trip, I say we went to Germany and Austria and places like that, and we do try and find as many local dishes with a vegan option as we can. So we were traveling through Belgium on the way to Amsterdam and then on to the Netherlands, and I think we were in Ghent, and of course, sort of Germany, Belgium, Netherlands are big on potatoes, and God, I can't remember the name of the dish, but I do remember that it was had a very strong beery taste to it. So Belgium, of course, is famous for its Belgian beer, possibly the best place in the world to grab a pint. But yeah, Belgium for sure. I spent quite a lot of my time in my 20s in the Netherlands as well, and again, big on potatoes. And you know, Netherlands is very flat, so they've got lots of farming culture and things like that. So a lot of root vegetables. So a lot of the local dishes which I tried and experienced and really fell in love with. I think Dutch food also gets a bit of a bad reputation, but yeah, I think where they had so many carrots and onions and potatoes, that's really the foundations of Dutch cuisine. Um, Kale as well. So um, yeah, in that sense, yeah, Belgium, very beer heavy dishes. Netherlands, lots of root vegetables. So I think definitely for those two countries, and Germany again is similar. The root vegetables sort of is, and the cuisine goes back to the landscapes really. And then places like Vietnam, Thailand, Southeast Asia, completely different, but flavors are amazing there. So sort of Western European, Northern European cuisine is quite hearty, but Southeast Asia, you've got rice paddies. Of course, you've got rice and you've got chili peppers and really exotic fruits and vegetables that some of which I'd never seen before until I'd been backpacking. And yeah, I think food really does tell the story of a place and the landscapes and, the different sort of food options that they've got, the ingredients that they've got to create these amazing tasting things like pad thai or khao lak, which was my favorite dish from Hoi An. I don't know if I think it's a specific dish to Hoi An in Vietnam, but khao lak is I can't eat it anymore because it's very porky dish, unfortunately. But yeah, food, destinations, and telling the story of a place. Yeah, it all goes hand in hand. Yeah.
No, no, you're 100% right. Now, you mentioned when you were out about in the caravanning that you were also combining work with pleasure, so to speak.
Mhm.
Would you say that it's getting easier to work on the move than ever before?
Yeah, I think so. I think COVID definitely changed the way a lot of people work and live now. And COVID also sort of triggered this sort of it put van life into the spotlight, I think. So as COVID sort of came about, and of course there's cost of living crisis going on around the world, people were looking for alternatives and ways that they could work and live and not be tied down to one place. So it definitely wasn't easy at the start, and at the beginning of every trip, it's always quite difficult, especially when you move into a different country and you cross the border. Van life is it can be difficult, especially when you're crossing borders into a different country. So we've got this tiny little device, which is sort of like a mobile router, and all you've got to do is put a physical SIM card into it. And each country is very different in terms of how easy that is to do and get the right sort of data plan. Lots of countries offer these travel sims specifically for tourists, where you might get, I don't know, 10 gigabytes of data or maybe 15 if you're lucky. But if you're spending, say, 30 days in a country and you're working full time while traveling, it can be a little bit tricky to get hold of those 100 gigabytes plus or unlimited data sims. But yeah, I think it's definitely getting a lot easier for people to start working remotely, especially as a freelancer, because you're not dependent on any one location. All you really need is a Wi-Fi connection and a laptop, basically. If you're a marketer like me and not really hands-on. But yeah, remote work, that was certainly a big boom in it since COVID, just out of necessity and keeping people safe and sort of putting up barriers between people so that they couldn't infect one another. And I think maybe we're past the peak of remote work now. I see a lot of job descriptions and job roles being posted, which are now moving away from remote work. I've got friends who work at places like JP Morgan, where they were happy to do the remote work, but now they're scaling back to hybrid, which does still mean that you're going to be location dependent. So you still need to be visiting the office one time a week or even one time a month, but that still doesn't give you the freedom to get away. So being a freelancer or having a job which is fully remote is really a bit of a blessing, because you can work anywhere in the world, basically, as long as the time zone suits. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, isn't the cat out of the bag now? And any companies wanting to reverse their rules, they're going to be swimming upstream like salmon.
Yeah. I think I don't really know I couldn't really pinpoint exactly what the decline in remote work has been, but I think there's been lots of stories and articles posted and things on social media where you see people like kind of hacking the system using these different software tools and mouse clickers that will show that you're online on Slack, but you're not really doing the work. So I think maybe remote workers have got a bit of a bad rap due to a couple of rotten apples that have spoiled the bunch.
Yeah,
But yeah, for me, I'm really, really lucky to be able to do van life full time, go and visit all these amazing different places, especially working in travel and tourism, you know, getting to see all of these amazing different locations between the hotspots and bucket list destinations. But yeah, yeah, I wish more people could experience it, but it's not necessarily for everyone.
why do you say that?
Um, I mean, there's the friends and family thing. I think, luckily, I'm quite introverted, and I'm quite happy spending time in my own company or just with my fiance for months on end, and just having, you know, weekly calls with the family. But you know, some people, family and friendships are really, really important to them. Of course, family and friends are important to me, but yeah, for some people, it can be a bit scary, I imagine, for people to be traveling to a new place every week and not knowing what to expect, what the road rules are, or what the different customs of a culture are, and things like this, you know. And then, yeah, the connection and spending time with friends and family, that's the sort of things that you're losing out on and giving up for the upsides of being able to travel and go on these amazing hikes every weekend and seeing a different part of the world every day. So there's upsides and there's downsides to doing van life full time. But yeah, I'll be spending lots of time with friends and family now that I'm back in England for the summer. But yeah, I think that's something which my parents have always understood about me, is that I'm not really satisfied with living a sort of average lifestyle. I don't mean average as in a negative sort of way, but the sort of prescripted, uh, formulaic way that people are expected to live. You know, you grow up, you get a job, you go to university, um, you have a family, get married, have kids. For me and my fiance, yeah, we try to do things off book as much as possible and just reap the benefits. Of course, pros and cons again, but yeah, we're not really looking to have kids. Certainly not at any point in the future. Well, not in the near future, at least. We're completely enjoying not having any of those sacrifices we have to make. I guess we're being kind of selfish in a way, but for us, we're both vegans, very very aware of the climate crisis, and she's doing her master's at the moment in sustainability and conservation. So we are very sort of mindful of that in every decision that we make, every big decision especially. So I guess kind of the climate change is also playing a factor in our decisions about having children and things like that. So yeah, kind of going a bit off tangent, Alex. Sorry, from the travel chat, but yeah, there are pros and cons for sure to van life, but we absolutely love it and are not keen to change our lifestyle anytime soon.
And why should you? Now, you mentioned that certain places you visited would be can be described as tourism hotspots, and some of them might even fall in the category of over tourism. Do you think
Yeah.
this phenomenon is is overplayed? I mean, that's obviously not overplayed for the people who are directly experiencing it in the places. I'm thinking of places like Barcelona,
Yeah.
Venice. We all know where the most popular places are. But I had it put once that, yeah, sure, it's okay to go to these places, but have you considered perhaps going somewhere similar, or maybe staying 50 kilometers from the place you want to go to, and just use public transport rather than having, feeling that you have to be in the middle of it, whatever it is? Do you think it's really about destination management?
Yeah, I don't think the over-tourism issue is being overplayed at all. I spent a lot of my time studying the subject and the issues that we have within the tourism industry, and over-tourism, as well as climate change, are among the most pertinent ones. The thing which I don't really think there's any one sort of group that you can point the finger at to blame, really. I think that there's multiple issues. I'm reluctant to sort of blame travelers, because they're influenced by things which they see online, or in magazines, or on TV, or wherever, or TV shows. But yeah, I think that a lot of the problems are to do with marketing and social media. It really frustrates me when I see bucket lists published from places like Condé Nast Traveler, or I don't know, Lonely Planet, for example. I mentioned Condé Nast Traveler because I think one of their bucket list places this year or last year was Antarctica, and I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me! One of the most fragile ecosystems on the planet, and Antarctica is already welcome. I say welcoming. There's no one really that lives there except a handful of scientists. But the boom in Antarctic tourism has grown massively over the last few decades, and I think now they've got something like over 100,000 visitors per year, and most of them are arriving on these big cruise ships, and they're taking flights, of course, to get to the destinations where they take the cruises from. But Antarctica is just one of many over-tourism problems. Personally, I think that we should just not allow travelers or tourists to visit Antarctica full stop, and it should just be reserved for scientists. But yeah, in terms of sort of destination management, I don't think it's. You mentioned about staying somewhere else and or visiting like an alternative place instead of the hotspot. So say like a Girona instead of Barcelona, or let's think, I don't know, Norwich instead of London, or something like that. That is all well and good in terms of the theory that, okay, so Barcelona has got too many tourists. Okay, let's just send them somewhere else. Let's try and demarket, encourage people to visit different places in the Catalonia region. But that doesn't necessarily fix the over-tourism problem if Girona doesn't have the infrastructure in place to welcome suddenly this growing number of tourists which are coming, and travelers. So if the hotel capacity isn't there, or the public transport infrastructure isn't there and prepared for suddenly a huge influx of tourists in the summer season, then that only really exacerbates the issue. So, I mean, I think really for me, the issue lies with the local governments not being prepared and not having the right infrastructure in place, or not really balancing the number of visitor arrivals with sustainability and consulting local stakeholders, local people who live there. You know, Barcelona's got a big problem with Airbnb at the moment. I can't remember if it was Barcelona or another city recently which has decided to ban Airbnb because the problem's got so big, and it's causing local rental prices to go up, which is pushing local people further and further out of the city, which makes things more difficult for work and just general life. So yeah, it's really complicated, over tourism. So I would like to see, it's really difficult with the travel publications, because as soon as you start saying, don't go to Barcelona or don't go to London, go here instead, then all of a sudden you create the next problem. If that becomes, you know, the next Lisbon of 10 years ago, or Lisbon suddenly is full to the brim, so let's go to Porto instead. And now both cities really feel like they're drowning under the footsteps of tourists. But I don't think it's necessarily, again, the visitors' fault necessarily. I think that a lot of people, when they're planning a holiday, they just want to relax, have a good time, and they don't really want to have to think about it too much. So the easy option is just to, okay, where have friends traveled? Okay, friends have traveled to the places where the bucket lists have mentioned, or yeah. So I don't know. I think we just need sort of more education around community-based tourism and the needs and wants of local people, and pass the microphone over to them to say, do you want tourism in your destination? If so, how much of it do you want, and how much of it are you willing to tolerate in order to benefit from, you know, the tourism dollars that can come from wealthy travelers, or people who want to spend, you know, I definitely wouldn't say I'm a wealthy traveler for sure, but spending a longer time in these places like backpackers can contribute a lot to local economies. But you can't make these decisions without involving local people. And I think that the decision makers need to take that a bit more seriously and start involving local people and talking about their rights and how it's going to affect them, and how to alleviate those problems, like Airbnb or the cruise industry in Venice, for example. How do you sort of preempt what problems could happen before it gets to the point of crisis? Because when you get to that crisis point, it's really difficult to pull back and right all of the wrongs that you've made, and suddenly you think, oh, we've got a problem now. Okay, with a bit of better destination management and planning, and working out what the tourism infrastructure and capacity is, then you can plan around that, instead of a lot of these destinations and businesses, tour operators, all of these mass market giants, which are just sort of pursuing uncapped visitor growth and profits, no matter what the cost, and not really thinking about the local people, or just thinking about local people as a mere afterthought. Yeah, it's a delicate subject, over tourism, for sure.
Yes, yeah. There isn't an easy answer.
No.
Now, slightly changing tack here. So I wanted to sort of go back in time in your professional life, to the first time that you went into marketing. So I first wanted to ask you about what was it about marketing that you found attractive? And I noticed the first time was, I believe, in accessible travel.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd finished my master's in tourism management in 2020 at Bournemouth University. But graduating in 2020 was just about the worst time to try and find a job in travel, because it was right in the middle of COVID, and really the tourism industry was on its knees. So So really trying to find different job opportunities, there were none, basically. Um, so I got in touch with a family friend who runs an accessible travel charity called Enable My Trip. And he was looking for a bit of help from, well, from myself, basically, or anyone really, any volunteer that could spare some time. And I had time to spare. I just graduated, didn't have any job, so I had all the time in the world really to try and get a bit of experience and learn the ropes of what it's like to be working in tourism. So I came on board with Enable My Trip as a volunteer, spending a couple of hours each week helping Simon Miller, the founder, to try and grow their presence, become more visible, generate more fundraising opportunities, more donations, and get the word out about what Enable My Trip was doing. And the whole idea of Enable My Trip is that information for disabled people when it comes to traveling is really, really hard to find sometimes. Whether you're going on a cruise or you're staying on a hotel, um, there really is a vacuum of information in terms of what disabled people can expect. So when you go onto like booking.com, for example, or yeah, let's use booking.com as an example. So if you were to book a room on booking.com, you'll usually get a message which says your room has been reserved. Or yeah, your room has been reserved, or we will get back to you to confirm, and something like that. Like basically, the problem with that for people with accessibility needs is that a reservation is not always guaranteed. So, you'll often find when you go to hotels that your room has been changed, or we'll have to move you to a different building or a different location, like a sister hotel or something like that. But if that happens to a person, say, in a wheelchair, that their room is not guaranteed, then all of a sudden, if they don't have another accessible room with a hoist and a wet room, for example, in their room, that suddenly destabilizes the whole trip. That ruins the whole trip potentially if they can't find somewhere else. And it's also really difficult to get around if you're taking care of someone who has cerebral palsy or who's wheelchair bound. So yeah, I got to learn a lot with Simon at Enable My Trip. So basically, they've built this big online directory of all of thousands and thousands of different accommodation providers, hotels, lodges, even expanding to things like tour operators, travel agencies, cruise ships, and things like that, to put all of this accessible travel information in one place, so that people know what to expect, and the reviews and things like that. So it's a huge library of this information to take the stress out of travel planning for people with disabilities and their carers. So yeah, in terms of marketing, my job was to spread the word, increase visibility, drive some more donations, and yeah, we spent a lot of time developing their social media channels, tapping into different Facebook groups and things like that. And yeah, now I'm no longer just a volunteer with them. I'm a trustee with the charity. I think I have been now for 3 years. So I'm now part of these governance meetings and talking about the future of the charity, and just making sure everything's operating responsibly and correctly. And yeah, it's going really well in terms of fundraising and helping people with accessible travel needs to plan their holidays without fear of things potentially going wrong.
Yeah. No, it's important work, isn't it? I imagine that over the time you've been with them, you've discovered either travel sectors or countries or regions that are better prepared than others? And would you say that, well, A, is that true? But B, are you seeing improvements? After all, the accessible industry, I was told the other day, is now a $50 billion industry. So that tells you how many people want to travel.
Yeah. Well, there's two sides to it, really. I think in one sense, there's a lot of travel businesses that would like to accommodate more disabled travelers, but it's very expensive, being completely honest, because of all these different transport requirements that you have. You know, you can't just take a standard coach transfer from the airport to the hotel. There has to be dedicated mobile vehicles with hoists and things like that that can get people around safely. But I think there really is a growing consensus that we need to give disabled travelers the same rights as non-disabled travelers. And there's been lots of travel conferences I've been to recently where accessible travel is increasingly on the agenda and on the conference programs. So we are making slow progress, but it's slower than I'd like it to be, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But it's one of those things you have to be consistent and persistent with, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to keep reminding people that, yes, you did say this. So on. So after this, you moved into responsible tourism marketing, which you described as a tough area. So perhaps you could explain what attracted you towards responsible tourism, and why do you think it's a tough area?
Yeah, so responsible tourism is really difficult, especially as a marketer. But I'll just rewind back slightly. I mean, I've always been passionate about nature and the environment and having a liberal outlook on life. So, but when I went into doing my master's degree, my initial dream was actually to graduate and then move out to Southeast Asia and set up a hostel of my own because I love backpacking so much. But very, very quickly, I discovered all of these issues within tourism, you know, problems with the cruise industry, problems with the emissions of aviation, over-tourism as well, and the impacts on nature and local people. And I really thought there's really too much here to just sweep under the rug and forget about. So I always wanted to end up working in sustainable tourism and making travel better and more equitable. So I started work with Enable My Trip. That led to eventually working as a travel agent with a local business back in Bournemouth, back home. And then I started working with a travel marketing agency, which was a really fantastic experience because you get exposure to, I think I was working with about 50 different clients over the course of a year, and you get to understand the different problems and challenges that they're facing and what they want to achieve and how marketing can help them through different channels like social media, paid ads, email, blogs, whatever you like, basically. But the problem with working with those two businesses, it felt that the travel agency and the travel marketing agency, it felt that sustainability was never really on the agenda or a concern for the clients or the business itself. So after I'd finished with the travel marketing agency, I wanted to get back to what I really was passionate about, which was responsible tourism, making travel better. But when you try to blend responsible tourism with marketing, it gets really, really difficult and really complicated. I think travel marketing is really exciting, but I see a lot of cheap, easy, naughty tactics, basically. on different call to actions like book now, limited places, or final chance to get 30% off on your Black Friday sale or whatever. There's a lot of pressure, I think. And as well as that, I've worked with there's so many things that you've got to be aware of in terms of responsible tourism, what's wrong with the industry and what needs attention and what we need to be conscious of and what we need to fix. So when I work with my clients, I'm very open and transparent about this and tell them that if you're looking for short-term results in the next quarter or the next month or whatever, if you've got a big offering campaign that you want to double your revenues by the end of next year, I tell them it's not going to happen because firstly, selling travel is not like selling a t-shirt. You don't just see an ad with a cute cat on it and think, oh yeah, okay, I'll buy that. Travel is a long customer journey. It takes years for people to dream and plan and be inspired by different ideas. But then when you add sustainability into the mix, you need to make some decisions about transportation and emissions and again, the effects on local people. And one example which I had with a client recently was that my client is basically building this slow travel tech app, which is kind of like Komoot in a way. Komoot is like one of these hiking tracking apps where you can see different trails and things like that, and you can track the stats and things. But what he's trying to do is basically turn that travel tracking idea into more journaling and more about storytelling. So you can still track your journey, but it's not about the stats. It's about pinning photos and notes and memories to your journey, and embracing slow travel, staying in touch with friends and family and keeping them updated to show them that you're A, safe, and B, you're having a great time. But when I was first doing an audit of his website, one of the first things which I noticed, which maybe not every other marketer would notice, is that every single picture on his website was a picture of white people, every single one. And for some people that might just go unnoticed, but let's say you are someone from Sri Lanka or Uganda that wants to download this app and go on a trip, then that lack of representation of people who look like you does become a lot more noticeable. So it's just about being aware of the issues, being aware of what are the naughty, cheap tricks that other travelers try and do. And instead of sort of forcing them to make the sale or get a booking by any means necessary, it's about educating them and showing them why this trip is better than your average Expedia package holiday, and not rushing them into anything, just educating them and organically telling them the story of local people, of the local destination, and why it's a much richer experience. Because for me, at least, my dad going on holiday to Egypt and Turkey every year, sipping beers by the pool for 2 weeks and barely getting outside, I just think that's really not for me. Maybe it is his idea of a perfect holiday, but for me, my best travel memories have always come from meeting local people and experiencing things that I'd never get to experience back home. So yeah, marketing for responsible tourism is education heavy, and but at the same time, I try and encourage some clients, not all of them, because every business has their different target audience. So, for example, say your ideal customer is a Greenpeace activist that goes out on weekends with, placards fighting for against climate change and things like that. If that's your ideal customer, perfect. Shout about sustainability from the rooftops. But I think most people don't they don't want to feel guilty about their holiday. They don't want to feel like, "Oh, there's a lot of pressure here. This holiday feels heavy." And I think when people think about sustainability, the average person, they either think a responsible holiday is going to be either more expensive, or there's going to be some kind of sacrifice, like, I don't know, I've got to keep hold of my towels for a week on end or something like that. Or, worst of all, it's going to be a little bit boring. But responsible tourism is actually the opposite of that, because you can have these amazing experiences with local people and with nature. But you don't really want to dissuade them from making that decision. I always say that you should, rather than sort of giving yourself a pat on the back and talking about how sustainable you are, you shouldn't bury that under the sand. But the best time to talk about that and the impact that the visitor's trip is having, your guest's holiday at your hotel is having, is when they're there. And you can actually show them rather than telling them. That's sort of marketing gold dust there, is showing and not telling. So I think we need to do more of the focus on how are you doing the marketing and storytelling while people are actually there after they've booked. And it's just about communicating sustainability in the right places, not going too heavy during the sort of booking and planning period, but being honest and educating them. And if they want to find out more, they could go to your about page or your blog section. But the traveler experience has always got to come first. Not sustainability. Sustainability is a bonus for them, but for the businesses, for us people who are trying to make travel better, that needs to be built into the heart of our businesses from the start. The foundations there should be a sustainability pillar in there. But yeah, sorry, I've gone off on a long old winding nutshell there, Alex. But yeah, those are my thoughts on responsible tourism marketing. It's not easy, even for people who are good at marketing. It's really, really difficult. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're saying there's, effectively there's a interesting balance to be struck all the time. On one side of the equation, if you do nothing or say nothing, there are consequences. Tourism remaining a certain way. At the other end of the scale, you might feel the urge to feel that it's about getting travelers to care more about the journeys that they're going on. But I think you summed it up really well. So
that's a relief.
Now, at some point, and the reason the two of us actually met is that you decided to create something called Latitude. So tell me what was there an event? Was there a lightning strike came from the sky? What was your inspiration for Latitude, and what does it do?
Yeah, Latitude. Okay, well, firstly, Latitude is basically a community for responsible tourism professionals. It's where people can meet, connect with one another. That connection turns into conversation. That conversation, we hope, will turn into collaboration and partnership opportunities. And we're not claiming that Latitude or I have all of the answers to fix tourism, but my hope is that two people much smarter than I will come together in one of our events and create the next best thing since sliced bread for responsible tourism. An industry disruptor like Airbnb, but in the shape and form of doing things ethically, making travel fairer, more equitable. So I'm hoping that Latitude is just sort of the catalyst and the incubator for these much bigger industry changing ideas. But I've just felt recently that there isn't really a place for people to do that working in responsible tourism. So when I first went freelance, maybe 3 years ago now, one of the first things I realized being a freelancer compared to being an employee was that I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas around with or ask questions like, what do you think of this idea? Very suddenly, I was all by myself, just guessing, basically. So I quickly realized the importance of networking. So I attended this event at World Travel Market in London, which is one of the world's biggest travel industry events. I think around 45,000 people go there every year. And I attended this event. It was a speed networking format. So very simple, just, okay, everyone in the room, we're gonna have 2 minutes, and then the host would ring a bell, and then, okay, move to the next person, hand over your business card, introduce who you are. And I thought, this is a really fun, simple concept. But the problem was, because the industry is so broad and you've got people from all kinds of different corners doing all kinds of different things, tech, booking payments, cruise sales, tour guides, it's just so vast and diverse. So the problem for me is because it was just for everyone, I ended up talking to people doing medical tourism in Turkey, trying to tell me I should fix my stereotypically bad British teeth and go over and visit him so that he can sort me out, speaking to cruise line managers. And I was just like, it's really nice to meet you, but we're on completely different chapters of completely different books here. So that evening, after I attended that event, I went to the Good Hotel, which is usually where all the sustainable tourism folks hang out. And I met so many great people there. It was, people, when you're all on the same page, the conversation just happens naturally. You don't have to figure each other out. There's no real icebreaker needed because we're all passionate about changing travel for the better. And that's been the real positive of Latitude, is by niching down and saying, we are for this kind of people. We're about making travel better. We're not for the people who are happy with business as usual, that are after visitor growth and profits by any means necessary. We're for the people who care about making things better, taking care of nature, considering the needs and wants of local people. So yeah, kind of a snowball of different things happened around that time when I hosted the first event last January. There was that event at World Travel Market and then meeting people at the Good Hotel. But I'd also just sorted out a Google business account. And in my account, I saw, okay, on Google Meet, I can have up to 150 people per meeting. And I thought, I've been having these networking calls trying to meet other people one at a time. Why don't I invite hundreds of people, 150 people with my Google business cap? And I saw that they had breakout rooms as well. And I thought, okay, what if I create multiple rooms, put 4 people in a room, 5 minutes at a time, and then we switch rooms so everyone gets to meet everyone. And yeah, that first event I did last year all by myself, which was really stressful without having the sort of admin support, was it was really nerve-wracking and stressful for me, but at the same time it was really exciting and people seemed to love it, even though the 5 minutes they felt was way too long. But yeah, that was the start of Latitude last year. Before we even started calling it Latitude, it was just back then called Sustainable Tourism Speed Networking. Possibly my worst piece of marketing work ever. It's like Ron Seal, that does what it says on the tin. But yeah, that's how it started last January. And I thought maybe only a handful of people would be interested, say like 20, 30 as an ambitious estimate. But in the end, that first event sold out completely. 100 tickets, all gone. And then we did the second one in March. We expanded things a little bit. I brought on a co-host. And then last June or July, I started to think about, okay, let's develop this, because there's a real hunger and desire and a need for this. And it seems to have accidentally caused an impact. It is actually working. So people are not just having conversations saying, oh, hi, I do this, I do that, and nice to meet you. But they were actually creating these new connections, creating new partnerships, like you yourself, Alex. I know that you've had a couple of podcast guests on here and met lots of other different people through previous Latitude events. But yeah, we're doing the next events in in July. But yeah, how was your experience, Alex, from the
Well,
last Latitude events in March?
I'm with you when it comes to networking. I just felt that it was an intriguing idea to spend, 5-10 minutes with different people, and even if we didn't have in-depth conversations, I actually saw that those invisible flags going up in different people, realizing that there's other people like them. And people saying, "Oh, you think that, do you? Oh, I didn't know that happened." There were lots of short remarks like that, and I think it makes a massive difference. Seeing people,
Yeah,
it's so different to you just connecting to someone who's a complete stranger.
yeah,
And that to me has made a massive difference to the possibilities. And well, I think you've discovered something, because it seems to be having some momentum. And I think a couple of words have stuck out to me on your marketing. One was change makers, and the other was rebels. So
yes.
what was I have to ask what your motivation for saying that it's a place for rebels?
Well, I mean, a lot of us who've attended, who are part of Latitude, we're really not happy with how the travel industry is going at the moment. The growth of these different businesses and the dominance of the mass market giants. Like every conversation I have with friends and family, either Booking.com or Airbnb always comes up. So the disruptors, the rebels, and the change makers, we're all the people that want to make travel better, to make it more equitable and fairer and better for everyone, rather than just sort of C-level executives of these massive industry giants that are really exploiting, I think, destinations and local people, and extracting as much value as possible without giving anything back. Whereas I think most people working in responsible tourism, and certainly people that join Latitude, want to change that. So yeah, we're sort of the radical edge, I guess, of tourism, we're the activists trying to change things and shake things up, because well, because over-tourism is a growing problem, but a much larger issue, I think, is the issue of climate change and the impact it's having on developing countries in particular. Those people are feeling these effects now, and the travel industry is a big contributor in terms of global carbon emissions. So that's sort of where my head is at in terms of trying to change things. And yeah, it's been amazing to see these different connections come out of Latitude. People I met at travel conferences saying, "Oh, hey, I just met Kim, who I first saw at Latitude for a cup of coffee," and to see different stories and opportunities actually come out of it, rather than just an exchange of business cards. That particular woman, Kim from Scotland, who lives in Sweden at the moment, she connected with Charlotte Vogels from Fair Tourism right at the very end of one of the first sessions I did. And in the end, that led to Kim spending 6 months in Kenya developing community-based tourism with the people in the Masai Mara, And that's my favorite story which has come out of Latitude so far. I'm sure there's plenty of others that I haven't heard of yet, but I mean, there's also smaller things which have come out of it, not quite as I guess, yeah, other stories, I guess, like on a smaller scale, let's say, like newsletter features, podcast interviews like you've done, Alex, business mentorships. So we've kind of stumbled upon things and this momentum and energy that Latitude has now got behind it completely by accident, because I don't know anything about events or events management. I'm just kind of like going with the flow, and people seem to love it, and there's an appetite for it. So we're going from strength to strength, and yeah, it's really, really exciting to see.
Yeah, no, it is. So if it's removing some barriers, where do you think it can go from here?
Well, in terms of removing barriers, travel conferences are really great. I've always found them really useful, as long as I speak to the people who are on the same page as I am in terms of values and principles when it comes to working in tourism. But the problem with travel conferences is that they're really, really exhausting, and they can also be prohibitively expensive. Even World Travel Market, which is usually free to attend every year. But if you're, say, a tour operator in Southeast Asia, you've got to get a flight halfway around the world, stay in expensive London accommodation for a week. So that can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. Of course, you know, you can get lots of value out of that. But Latitude, at the moment, all of our events are online. So they're a much lower cost. At the moment, each event is just $15, and by making it virtual, it's not location dependent. So you don't have to be in London or in Berlin to attend this event. You can join Latitude in your slippers, in your dressing gown, with a cup of tea, and be working in the countryside in England and end up speaking to someone who's based in Peru or in Palau, in India. You can connect with people all over the world, and it's not just one person. You can connect with dozens and dozens of people in a single session, and all of those people, again, are on the same page. So it doesn't matter if you're working in completely different parts of the industry. We all want to change travel for the better. So yeah, that's one of the barriers we're removing, and it's especially important because it helps to make responsible tourism more inclusive. Because if you're a husband and wife business running safaris, just starting out your business in Kenya, you can't afford to go to World Travel Market or ITB in Berlin or any of these other travel conferences. But Latitude helps to make the opportunities more inclusive, and it opens doors for people, particularly in developing countries, which I'm really passionate about, so they're not left out of the conversation. But yeah, in terms of where Latitude is going next, our next events, we're doubling in size, trying to get bigger and better and change things every time. We're hosting the Global Relay in July, from the 6th to the 9th of July. And the idea of the Global Relay is we're hosting 4 events, starting in Asia and Pacific and Oceania, and then working westward towards the Americas. So from east to west, we're going from Asia and Oceania to Europe and Africa, and then we're doing a transatlantic edition, and then eventually we're finishing up in the Americas. And yeah, I'm really, really excited because we've done a big upgrade, which has really hurt my bank balance, unfortunately. But we've upgraded from things like Google Meet and Zoom to this new purpose-built virtual networking platform, which is really interactive, and it's going to be a huge upgrade in terms of the user experience. So I'm really excited for people to experience that in a bit more of an immersive environment, almost like playing The Sims when I showed it to someone else the other day. You get like a little avatar and you can move around the space and sit at tables and chairs with people you want to connect with. But beyond July, I'm hoping to start doing a few more panels, a few more educational discussions, but eventually I want to develop Latitude into more than just events. I want us to be the best in class in terms of running virtual tourism events, but I also want to create a proper community platform for Latitude. And I didn't really consider this at the start. It was only at, I think, ITB last year when people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I love being part of the Latitude community." I was thinking, hey, whoa, what do you mean Latitude community? We just do events. And then I was like, okay. You don't get to decide what Latitude is. If people feel like this is a community, then you need to go with it and facilitate that as much as possible. So my plan towards the end of the year is to start a community platform which will host all of our events and masterclasses, workshops, and also be just a perpetual presence for people to connect, rather than just, these events which happen every month. So doing a lot of research at the moment, having conversations with previous attendees who've joined Latitude about what they would really value in a community platform. Because most places on Circle have the typical resources, courses, and webinars, okay, and maybe a community chat forum. Okay, that's great. But if no one's going to use it or finds real value, like they have from the events which we've hosted, then that's just going to be a bit of a waste of time. So I want to think creatively and outside the box about what is really going to help people make these new partnerships and collaboration opportunities, and what's going to help move the needle and try and somehow make the industry better together. But yeah, that's the grand plan for the foreseeable future, Alex.
Yes, well, it's an exciting one, and it'll be interesting to see how things develop. And I guess the $6 million question, or at least it was when I was growing up, there's probably a new number now. If the travel industry feels like it's too big to change, which it probably sometimes feels that way, do you think it's, I don't know, but I tried to put down in words before our conversation today, is it trying to adapt? Is it pretending to adapt? Might it, evolve on its own in due courses? Or do you think in the final analysis, it will only change direction, if that's indeed what it needs to do, because of external pressures?
Oh, I mean, I'd like to think optimistically, but we've seen what's happening with over-tourism. People only tend to react at the point when the crisis has already happened, and you're sort of trying to work backwards and undo all of the problems which have been caused by a lack of proper management and forward thinking. And changing something the size of the travel industry is like changing any kind of technology. The smaller something is, the quicker the technology develops. So for example, like smartphone technology, you think about the mobile phone I used to have 20 years ago was not a smartphone. It was just a brick, basically. Play Snake on it on my Nokia 3310 or whatever. But the advancements in smartphone technology has happened really, really quickly. But if you consider something the size of an airplane, airplanes haven't really changed all that much in the last 50 years. Lots of these Boeing and Airbus airliners and planes are still, being in use 20 years after they were first manufactured. And I know there's all of this talk about electric planes and things, but looking at the realities of that and the investment that's happened so far is so far away from what's required. So realistically, I don't think that I basically think that the tourism industry is slowly changing. We are making slow gains at a snail's pace, but the problem is that change which is happening and the positive impacts that we're having are being outpaced by this pursuit of visitor arrivals, of the growth in visitor numbers, and the money, the dollar signs are more attractive than taking care of nature, which is really a dangerous point of view for people working in tourism, because we need these destinations, and those destinations can't survive without us taking climate change seriously. Talking about ski resorts now, which might not exist in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we could see the ski industry, at least in the Alps, in Europe, completely evaporate unless we adapt and start using snow machines, which would be a massive, massive shame. But yeah, that's sort of what I'd hope to do with Latitude, is because responsible tourism feels like a very inspiring corner of the industry, yes, but it also feels very fragmented, like lots of individual pieces of a puzzle which haven't yet come together. So I'm hoping that by bringing people who are passionate about changing travel for the better and bringing them together to have a unified voice, somewhere where we can come up with ideas together, that way we can, as a collective, then influence different businesses, influence policymakers and governments and the broader industry. So yeah, at the moment, things are happening far too slowly for my liking, but I'm hoping that by bringing people together, we can influence the industry and show and educate the rest of people who just see business as usual as fine, that things really need to change, and they need to change yesterday, basically, but tomorrow, today, as soon as possible, basically.
And well, I suppose it's really about developing a platform, as you say, to bring loads of people together, that have similar aims. And I think, like I say, the fact that you've touched a nerve, it's an opportunity to increase the noise in that way. So no, I do hope that the noise gets louder, as they say.
Yes, no, me too.
It's a fantastic opportunity. Well, we could talk on many aspects of this for a considerable amount of time, and I do appreciate you taking your time out of your day to come and chat to us today, Jamie. So yeah, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a privilege and a pleasure to speak to you today, Alex. So thanks for having me on.
No, you're most welcome.